Blessings Booktube. This is the second in a series I'm starting looking at original fairy tales, folk tales, legends, stories of that nature that have been reimagined as fractured fairy tales as part of the Rocky and Bullwinkle show in the 70s. And what I do is I read the original, which is usually a bit different from the Disney version you might know. So that's a bit interesting, I find, with a couple little comments on it. And then I tell you about how it was interpreted by the Fractured Fairy Tales, which is always quite insane. Um, so we did one with the Grimms already. We did Rumpelstiltskin. And today we're doing Charles Perrault after the Brothers Grimm, probably maybe neck and neck with Hans Christian Andersen for second place in our, stories for children echelon. What are we going to call that? Pantheon. Pantheon, that's the call. So you probably better know Charles Perrault as Mother Goose. So he's the author of the Mother Goose Tales, later translated by Andrew Lang. So this is a Little Red Riding Hood. This is one of the most famous tales that we have, and a very typical of, a girl becoming a woman, the red, all of that. Entering menses, as I once dared to say in a class I was teaching in passing when talking about fairy tales. Apparently mentioning menses is dirty, and should not, has no place apparently in discussions of literature in public schools. What did I know? Little Red Riding Hood by Charles Perrault. Once upon a time there lived in a certain village a little country girl, the prettiest creature who was ever seen. Her mother was excessively fond of her, and her grandmother doted on her still more. This good woman had a little Red Riding Hood made for her. It suited the girl so extremely well that everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother, having made some cakes, said to her, "Go, my dear, and see how your grandmother is doing, for I fear she has been very ill. Take her a cake and this little pot of butter." Little Red Riding Hood set out immediately to go to her mother, who lived in another village. As she was going through the woods, she met with a wolf, who had a great mind to eat her up, but he dared not, because of some woodcutters working nearby in the forest. He asked her where she was going. The poor child, who did not know that it was dangerous to stay and talk to a wolf, said to him, "I'm going to see my grandmother and carry her a cake and a little pot of butter from my mother." "Does she live far off?" said the wolf. "Oh, I say," answered Little Red Riding Hood, "it is beyond that mill you see there, at the first house in the village." "Well," said the wolf, "and I'll go and see her too. I'll go this way and you go that, and we shall see who will be there first." The wolf ran as fast as he could, taking the shortest path, and the little girl took a roundabout way, entertaining herself by gathering nuts, running after butterflies, and gathering bouquets of little flowers. It was not long before the wolf arrived at the old woman's house. He knocked at the door, tap, tap. "Who's there?" "Your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood," replied the wolf, counterfeiting her voice, "who has brought you a cake and a little pot of butter sent you by mother." The good grandmother, who was in bed because she was somewhat ill, cried out, "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." The wolf pulled the bobbin and the door opened, and then he immediately fell upon the good woman and ate her up in a moment, for it had been more than 3 days since he had eaten. He then shut the door and got into the grandmother's bed, expecting Little Red Riding Hood, who came some time afterward, and knocked at the door, tap, tap. "Who's there?" Little Red Riding Hood, hearing the big voice of the wolf, was at first afraid, but believing her grandmother had a cold and was hoarse, answered, "It is your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood, who has brought you a cake and a little pot of butter mother sent you." The wolf cried out to her, softening her voice as much as he could, "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin and the door opened. The wolf, seeing her come in, said to her, hiding himself under the bedclothes, Put the cake and the little pot of butter under the stool and get into bed with me. Little Red Riding Hood took off her clothes and got into bed. She was greatly amazed to see how her grandmother looked in her night clothes, and said to her, "Grandmother, what big arms you have." "The better to hug you with, my dear." "Grandmother, what big legs you have." "All the better to run with, my dear." "Grandmother, what big ears you have." "All the better to hear with, my child." "Grandmother, what big eyes you have." "All the better to see with, my child." "Grandmother, what big teeth you have got." "All the better to eat you up with." And saying these words, the wicked wolf fell upon Little Red Riding Hood and ate her all up. Moral: children, especially attractive, well-bred young ladies, should never talk to strangers, for if they should do so, they may well provide dinner for a wolf. I say wolf, but there are various kinds of wolves. There are also those who are charming, quiet, polite, unassuming, complacent, and sweet, who pursue young women at home and in the streets. And unfortunately, it is these gentle wolves who are the most dangerous ones of all. So Perrault points the moral of his stories. Some do, some don't. Aesop, Grimm, Anderson, everyone's got their own style. Excuse me. There's some interesting details in here. However, I want to keep these quite short and fun, so I'm not going to go into analyzing them. There's the repetition of the cake and pot of butter, and the lifting the bobbin, quite a bit. So they're probably significant details, symbolic. There is the very interesting detail of Little Red Riding Hood getting undressed to get into the bed with her grandmom. However, this is not perhaps quite as shocking as it may be to modern listeners, as it was a thing in the past for the children to sleep often with the elders of the family. This was in order to provide the body warmth and ease the aches and pains of the older generation in the night. So that was a habit that has existed in history. So perhaps not too crazy, but certainly suggestive, and usually sanitized out of the tale in the modern retellings. What I found quite interesting here is there's no woodcutter savior at the end, right? They are mentioned earlier as a reason why the wolf couldn't eat her in the forest, and actually, grandmother's house is in the edge of the village, so it's actually in the village. So I thought that was very interesting. I didn't expect that. So no savior at the end. So as we know, these the real folk tales are usually a lot grimmer, to use the word, a lot more violent, and have non-Disney endings a lot of the time. So in this case, she gets eaten up. And the moral is very much about warning young ladies coming of age about seducers. So I think that's the reason for the long, oh, what this and that you have, oh, what this and that you have, oh, what this and that you have. Sort of mirroring an exchange that a seducer might be, comparing her eyes to lovely limpid pools and her, or, whatever, her smile to the crescent moon. These kinds of back and forth physical observations as part of the seducing routine. And then, so that's the official Perrault version. Now, let's talk fractured fairy tales. They did this one, like Rumpelstiltskin, twice. These days, gender-bending fairy tales is a very popular way of reimagining them. They did do Little Fred Riding Hood, but actually it's the other version I find a little bit more interesting, because in this one they subvert the victim paradigm by making Red Riding Hood the aggressor. Red Riding Hood in this version has a fur shop, and a very wealthy lady comes in and offers a huge sum of money for a wolf coat, which Little Red Riding Hood doesn't have. So she goes off Actually, the wolf ambles by her window as she has a gun in her hand in the um, cartoon in the window up to her head. It's crazy. Anyway, so she sees the wolf, right? It pursues him. The wolf is taking, I can't remember if it's a pot of butter and a cake to, but anyway, he's taking stuff to his grandma. So the wolf is cast as the victim here. And then Little Red Riding Hood has all the agency. She first tries to get his coat by straight up telling him that she's got this offer for lots of money and offering him a finder's fee of 10%, which he refuses. She next sets up as a fake barber, and it offers a free cut trim. So, but when he comes in, she refers to his fur at one point as sleeves, and he's cottons on. He's like, "Hey, wait a minute!" So he doesn't fall for that one, and so in the end, she thinks, "Oh, I'd better go and anticipate him. I'll go to Grandma's and hide out there." Grandma, I guess, is absent in this version, but she does have a bearskin rug, which Little Red Riding Hood puts on, gets herself in bed to appear like the grandma. It's very interestingly, there's a refrain here to the "You go your way and I'll go my way." We'll see who gets there first. In this version, he takes the highway, which is the direct route, but she gets there first. So there's like a joke about traffic in there somewhere. Anyway, the wolf arrives and sees his grandma, but unfortunately for Little Red Riding Hood, by this point the worm has turned, and the wolf remembers his wolfish nature and thinks, I want this money," and is willing to sell his own grandma to get it. So he sells his grandma, which is Red Riding Hood in the bearskin rug, to the old lady to the rich lady for all the money. And so he gets the money, and Little Red Riding Hood ends up a fur coat on a rich lady's shoulders. So that's the fractured fairy tale version of Little Red Riding Hood by Charles Perrault. Check out, if you have a few minutes, you might want to get on YouTube, check out the Rocky Bullwinkle show. It is insane what they get away with. They are constantly subverting everything. This is the height of the Cold War. I guess it probably went into the 80s. Yeah, I'm sure it did because I saw it. I don't know if it was first run or reruns, but I saw it on TV. And they're getting away with murder in terms of this, not even subtext, just the straight up satire of the Cold War and all kinds of great stuff. And they do a great job with these fractured fairy tales as well. Got some more coming up for you. Got Hans Christian Andersen, probably 1001 Nights, since I'm reading that with the group of booktubers now, and a few other treats for you. So hopefully you love this series. Let me know in the comments. Let me know who you would like me to do. Who's your favorite? What is the favorite story that you liked from when you were a kid? And I'll see if I can find that one. We'll do an episode on that one.